Alrighty, hi everybody.
Hello.
Happy day 2. Everyone have a good night. Who went on the boat? I did see some people that were on the boat. That's fun. We had a good time.
Good times.
Welcome to Modernizing Your Apps with .NET MAUI. We are going to ask you a couple questions. If you've been to either Sweeki's talk or our talk from the Community Tuesday, sorry, you've probably already been asked these, so, just bear with us, but hopefully we show you some new stuff. Yeah, let's jump right into it.
Let's do it.
So first and foremost, I'm Maddie. I work on the .NET team at Microsoft. I've been on the team for like 6 years, and we started the whole MAUI thing 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
So I have been working with customers and trying to get them up to date with MAUI from the very early days up until now, 2 months after Xamarin, which many of you will be upgrading from, was out of support. So we're still chugging, but we got plenty of time.
Yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Sweeky. I have been on this team for, 7, 8-ish years now. I primarily work with customers dealing with complicated, weird edge cases, trying to figure out where the MAUI app's going to look like, how their migration is going to look like, and I'm actually very excited to share some tips and tricks we've learned from quite a few of these customer engagements. A few of these apps are also already on the store post-migration, so it's been very exciting watching our customers be successful through all their migrations. Yeah, we're going to show you some cool stuff. We have some new features we're going to show you. So yeah, it's going to be very exciting.
Yeah. Okay, so question time. Who here has a Xamarin app that you're thinking about migrating? Okay. Good. Who here has a Windows app that you want to modernize in some way? Anyone?
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, good. So we do have a whole section about Windows at the end, so we'll spend extra time on that.
That's great.
We have spent a lot of time the past 6 months or so working closely with the Windows team to actually have a real story to tell you.
Exactly.
We collaborated. There is a slide we are now all allowed to use together.
Yes.
So we'll talk about that too. But the first bulk of this, we're going to talk about the MAUI migration stuff. Sweeky's going to do a couple demos, and most of the demo stuff is applicable to the Windows situation too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Great. All right, so what is MAUI? .NET MPAUI, Multi-Platform App UI. It is the .NET UI client development. We call client native, so mobile and desktop framework for using, reusing your UI, your device functionality, and all of that across all these 4 platforms: Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android, from a single code base. It is 2 years old now.
Yes.
As of GA, it's 4 years old as of when we started working on it. It's really coming into its toddlerhood. It yells at us now and kind of throws tantrums. Yeah, so we're having a good time. No, .NET 8 was the latest big release of MAUI. .NET 8 had over 600 bug fixes in it. So lots of things have been going on. We have other folks from the MAUI team here this week. Gerald, who gave a talk yesterday. Jonathan Peppers, who is giving a talk on .NET on the NES tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Not really MAUI, but it doesn't matter. And so as most of you know, because you're already in this world, .NET is kind of all over the place these days. We have web and desktop and mobile and gaming and AI and IoT, and we have Visual Studio Code, all the nougats you could possibly imagine or ever need. So, .NET is really, really unified. And so that's part of the reason we did this whole journey, for those of you on Xamarin, because we unified the platform. And so there were some things we had to change and also break in order to properly unify with .NET. And so that's kind of what we started with. We do have a ton of customers using MAUI. I get this question a lot. Like, Sweeky's actually worked with a good handful of the ones up here. We hear, are people actually shipping things with it? Is it ready? Is it production ready? Yes.
Yes.
I think that's in my FAQ. And then, of course, we have folks at Microsoft also using it. 2 of these were actually migrations. They successfully migrated.
Yes. Love the story with especially the M365 admin app. We had a great experience with them. They use first-party Microsoft services, so we're talking about MSAL for authentication. So it's a whole wonderful story helping them migrate. They are in the store now. Great experience. It's a big app. It's a complicated app, and they were able to migrate it from Xamarin to MAUI successfully. So yeah.
So plenty of prior art, if you will, to follow along with here. And so, like I said, .NET 8 was our last big release. Along with the bug fixes, we also, of course, did performance work, hybrid work, which we'll talk about is a very good strategy for those of you thinking about moving off of a Windows-specific platform. And then, tooling. We just actually shipped our VS Code extension, generally available yesterday. Very exciting. We were on the boat. And so people were texting me like, the blog images aren't loading. And I'm like, I don't have cell phone service. Like, you guys need to figure this out by yourselves. So it went out. They did okay without us. It was fine. And then, of course, .NET 9 comes in the fall. There's a lot of the same kind of with, improving performance, improving memory management, improving bugs. But also some work with bindings, which Sweeky will talk about a little teeny bit.
Yeah, we can talk about it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, we have like one slide at the end that will mention it, and some other things. So, .NET Conf already has dates. It's sometime in November. It's probably during my husband's birthday for the 4th or 5th year in a row. Nice. So I take off and I go to Seattle. So it's a good time. So let's talk about upgrading off of Xamarin. First and foremost, you should, because it's actually a better product. I promise. There's a lot that we did in Maui, and it's a lot of the code is the same, right? It is Xamarin v Next. We actually briefly considered calling it Xamarin 6. We also briefly considered calling it .NET Forms, and there was like a full riot. We were like, that is the worst thing I have ever heard. So we ended up with Maui. I don't know how we got there.
Bloom in there too,
Bloom was the one
popular,
we all wanted.
I have to say. .NET Bloom, we had that going on for a while.
Yeah. So anyways, there's a ton of things we did. A lot of the benefits we've seen from customers is really about the maintainability of your app, being able to be more flexible, add features quicker, ship quicker. We have done a ton of work to make the desktop experience not an afterthought. If you're on Xamarin and you ever try to target UWP, most people only targeted it for the sake of it built faster than Android. And so it was easy to test things out on Windows, But now there's actually things that are actually there for desktop experiences.
Exactly.
And it is a real actual option to migrate now, a full desktop app, even if you don't have a mobile dependency. Tons of features. Single project is the thing we really talk about in terms of productivity. Not having to have all of those head projects, the Android, the iOS, the UWP project, with your resources and putting your fonts together in 8 different places to make them load, and instantiating libraries in each different project every time you want to add a package. We've unified a ton of that. We also follow now the builder pattern, which is what they use in the rest of .NET. Much more familiar for folks coming into Maui from other .NET technologies, and much more flexible.
It gives us DI, which is super nice.
Yes, so. We have dependency injection and all that stuff. You don't have to pull in packages for a lot of that anymore.
Exactly.
So it is a good move in general, especially if your app is under active development, because .NET MAUI, we ship with .NET. We're a .NET optional workload, so you do not have to install MAUI when you install .NET, but you can very easily. We ship support for the major versions of the underlying platforms with those .NETs. So it actually lines up very well that Apple and Android start throwing betas out, like now. Apple's whole thing was Monday. And so they started their new Xcode beta and the iOS 18 beta, and so Android's going to follow suit with whatever Android we're on now, some candy or whatever. And so those things usually go stable around September. We don't get a heads up from them. We just kind of have to react, right? So we will, within usually a couple days of, the first betas take a while because we have to wrap all of it, but usually the last couple releases of these things are very stable at this point. So usually within a couple days of the stable release of iOS or Android, we have already shipped out the ability for you to add the latest bits. If you need, like day 2, basically, latest operating system support, you can get that with MAUI. But you have to go pull it until .NET 9, which is when we'll actually ship it out to you. Android is very flexible, and I know most of the world uses Android, so that's good. iOS is much less flexible. They want you to move as soon as things come out. And so they give you sometimes a runway as little as 6 months or a year to get off of Xcode versions. And then they bump Xcode versions randomly without telling anybody, and we're like, what is this? And so a major version of MAUI is going to receive patches for 6 months. And Xamarin SDK, so if you are on Xamarin, they are out of support. It is past May 2024. It is now June 2024.
A month and a half over.
Practically what that means for you is if you are on Xamarin, you're not getting security or bug fixes unless it's like super, super critical and someone, comes to us and has the right email to get through the back door. We've already turned quite a few people away. But if you are shipping through the app stores, you still have until next May, because that's when Apple is going to kick you off of the current version of Xcode, right? So you can get off MAUI by then. If you're not shipping through an app store,
you have a little bit more time.
Yeah.
But I still think you should, just for pure security reasons, though, I think it's a good idea to move over. You wouldn't want to wait.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, start now if you haven't, for sure. But you know, it's not the end of the world. We've had customers calling us like, our business is going to go under because Xamarin support is dead. And I'm like, first of all, we've been telling you about this for 2 years.
2 years now.
Second of all, it won't. You're going to be fine. There's plenty of ways around it.
Yeah.
If you're a mobile developer, you know your way around rules left and right. So that's just kind of what happens. Okay, so FAQs. This is kind of a collection of things that customers call up, and they're like panicking, and they ask me these things, and I have to answer them politely. I'm giving you the slightly less polite and more real version. Is Xamarin dead? But I love Xamarin. Oh my God, Xamarin! I've been using Xamarin since 2008 when Mono Touch came out. And then I was the first person to use Xamarin.Forms. I know, Xamarin has an amazing community. We're very lucky. Most of the real figureheads of Xamarin have come over to Maui too. And really, this is a good thing for Xamarin and its technology. It's folded properly into the .NET runtime now.
Yep.
It's this whole one.NET initiative. And so now we're using the same runtime libraries, all of that. With .NET,
CLI.
the CLI, yeah, the tooling is all unified now. So we're not rebuilding things for Xamarin apps that .NET had already built.
Yep.
So the supportability, the speed with which we can get things out the door is much better. Do you need to completely rewrite your app? No, not at all. Most of the code stays the same, which is great, especially things when it comes to the business logic of your app, because it's just .NET. If you have a native iOS or Android app, is that my next question? Yes. They just become .NET for Android or .NET for iOS.
Yep.
And the great thing about these are none of those APIs change.
Yeah.
So there's very, very, very little work to migrate.
I think I was just hearing from a customer who had just a .NET Android app, and they were able to migrate that in 2 days.
No, that's awesome.
It's just a .NET tool, like from a Xamarin Android to .NET Android. That's it.
Yeah, most of the bulk of changes is going to be in your UI layer.
Exactly.
If you have a lot of custom UI. For folks that don't have custom UI, it's a matter of changing the namespaces, and we have a tool for you. Do you have to migrate? Like I just said, no, technically, you really should. My job is to tell you that, yes, you have to. But, you know, I work for a company. We have politics. We have to prioritize things over other things. I know how it goes. So, you know, you have some wiggle room.
Start today is all we're saying.
Always take a look. Always take a look.
Or just take a look, yeah.
Is Maui production ready? We showed you the customer slides. Yes. .NET 8 had a huge bump in quality. I think our biggest thing we heard after .NET 8 was, .NET 8 is so good. Wow, this is so much better. I really wish I started trying to migrate now. I told this story to the folks who were here on Tuesday, but part of the reason we shipped Maui in 2022 when we shipped it is because component vendors, the folks who make the controls and the main things that people use in their Maui apps that we don't maintain, refused to actually start working on versions of it for Maui until they knew that Maui wasn't going to get killed in preview. So they were taking care of their own business, but they were like, we're not going to build for this until you guys release. And we said, okay, well, we're not really ready to release, but no one's going to be able to migrate without these packages anyways. So let's get it out the door. We had some early adopters who were perfectly fine. We had also some early adopters who had not a lot of fun. So those are the ones who mostly shouted, why are you doing this to me? Which I hear all the time because we are unifying this whole story. Also, you know, like we said, the tooling's all unified. There's a lot that is just good about this whole thing. The real breaking things in Maui we'll talk about a little bit. We rewrote kind of the architecture for how we render the UI under the hood.
So the layouts.
The layouts mostly. It's way faster. Like, we took all of the feedback you had given us throughout all of the time that, you know, everyone has spent in Xamarin. And a couple of those things we needed to kind of break a couple legs to make them work better. And so we took the opportunity. We said, we're changing the name, we're changing the namespace, so we'll break a few things. It's fine. And it is better in the long run. Folks who are on it now are very, very fast with updates and changes. We've also seen that the satisfaction for people who didn't come from Maui, or who didn't come from Xamarin, who just started a Greenfield Maui app, they're like, this is great. Why does everybody complain about this on Reddit? This thing is great. I'm like, well, because we moved their cheese, and they all have to take their app now and put it over here. So they should be angry. But folks new to it are really happy. And then, of course, what about the other things in the .NET ecosystem? What about Uno and Avalonia? All of these amazing things that are out there. They use .NET, you know, like, we love them. They have different kind of things that they're good at than we are. Like embedded and Avalone has a huge story.
Yep.
They have different focuses. They have different tooling. If you really love the UWP flavor of XAML, Uno is a great, great choice for you.
Yep.
And we'll all talk to them. So Uno will file a bug on us and be like, hey, you guys broke this. And we'll be like, oh, no, and we'll go fix it for them,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So, I'm not... that's also a migration path you can absolutely explore, especially coming from a native Windows app. But, I work for Microsoft. I work for the Maui team. So I am going to tell you to use Maui, and I'm going to say it's the best thing ever. So, OK, tactically.
Yes.
Upgrade tasks. The project file is a big change. We upgraded the project file from the thing with a bunch of random numbers and letters indicating that it was an Android or iOS app to something that actually just says .NET 8 Android. It's much nicer.
So
The number of lines has gone way down. The app builder, right? So that's the new entry point instead of the just app.xaml.cs, which was what we mostly used in Xamarin. Namespace changes. Xamarin.Forms go to Microsoft Maui. API changes. The biggest one that drives me the most nuts is that for some reason they changed color to colors or colors to color. It's just apparently it makes sense. Gerald can explain it to you because I yelled at him about it about 400 times. But some little things here. And then, of course, updating the NuGets to things that are compatible, compiling it and building it, and then seeing the biggest change with Maui in terms of like actually running the app is that we got rid of these random defaults we put on controls for padding.
Yes.
So we were like, who wants a button without padding? We're just going to make all buttons have 20 padding by default. And then people were like, why does my button have padding? I didn't add that.
Yep.
And so one thing we did with Maui is we reset everything to 0.
Yeah.
The good news we've actually found is this wasn't as big of an issue as we expected it to be because most people style their apps pretty heavily anyways.
Yeah.
So there is
You were overriding the default anyway, so we just overwrote the old default to a new default. So,
So if you have any styling, it's fine. But I have seen a couple examples, especially like my demo apps that are not heavily styled. I build it in Maui, and the UI just kind of goes like. That's the technical term.
It was an easy fix, though.
Yeah, it's an easy fix.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, you do have to look at the app before you ship it to the store. The nice thing is that all of these first 5, Upgrade Assistant does for you.
Yep.
And so Upgrade Assistant is an extension for Visual Studio. It works for not just Xamarin to Maui, but just revs between .NET versions, revs between .NET Framework and Core. For those of you still on WinForms Framework, I know how many of you there are. It is an ungodly high amount of people that are on a completely unsupported framework.
Oh my god.
So it is mind-boggling, but it works for that. And this will actually go through. It will fix your namespaces. It will fix the base types. It'll do some various code updates, and it converts those project files for you. I like to say that Upgrade Assistant is going to get you, like, depending on how crazy your app is, 60 to 70% of the way. There's going to be some work you have to do, but we keep iterating on Upgrade Assistant. We're doing a lot of different things with it. And one thing that just came out, Sweekriti is going to show you.
Yes. Take a look at. So
now I have to do like a dance while she unplugs the HDMI.
So we're gonna switch machines for a second.
Yep.
Oof. This will happen multiple times, so please bear with us. Elevator music.
Oh, and just so you know, Sweekriti is going to do this demo on her MacBook using Windows in parallels. This is a Windows Visual Studio extension, but the Mac runs it perfectly fine. In parallels. Especially ARM Macs, because we have ARM Visual Studio now. Just saying. Okay.
All right. So yes, first step in your upgrade process. If you don't have a Windows machine, get yourself a VM. But yes, as Maddie was saying,
or a DevBox.
Or a DevBox. You can totally do this on DevBox as well. So let's talk about the Upgrade Assistant a little bit. So as Maddie said, it is an extension. So you go manage extensions, download Upgrade Assistant. We have a beautiful doc. I'll show that in a second as well. That kind of shows you all the awesome stuff and how to get started with Upgrade Assistant. But let me show you the new cool feature that's come in. So pretty sure Maddie's got this question, but I've also got this question a lot. Is like, I don't want to commit to doing a whole migration process. I need to plan my sprint. I need to know how many engineers to put on it. Like, how much is the work I have to do for this? So took your feedback, and the Upgrade Assistant team has actually added this cool new feature. So if you right-click on the solution, and I made this mistake earlier, do not do this on your project file, but on your solution, and you go hit the upgrade option, there is this new Upgrade Assistant report generator. So this is essentially going to just analyze your app. So it's not going to do the actual upgrade process. It's just going to analyze it, and so give you like a report. So I'm going to start a new report. You click in, and as you can see, yes, UWP is included in this list. So click all of the projects that you want the analysis to be done for. You start hitting next, and you can go to .NET 8. You can go to .NET 9 if you're, fun and cool and love to try,
Bleeding edge
bits. But we are demoing. I do not want the wrath of the demo god, so we'll stick to .NET 8 for now. And select what you need. So it gives you two sort of components. You can analyze. You can only do your source code. You can only do your binary dependencies if you're talking about like just the NuGet package analysis and everything else, or you can do both. So why not do both, right? Hit analyze, and then the tool starts running. So it's gonna go through. You can watch this awesome little UI, gives you update. Another feedback that we got was like people started using Upgrade Assistant, and we didn't really tell you what is going on. Is it even doing anything in the background? Like, what's it doing? So now you have a more interactive feedback coming in. So I'm gonna switch over to a completed version of this, just so we're not stuck here watching what's going. Oops, what am I taking? There we go.
Yeah, so the Upgrade Assistant goes through literally every file in your code base, so it can take a few minutes.
Exactly. But once
make a cup of coffee,
you can leave it, go get a cup of coffee, come back, and you'll have this beautiful little report up that you can see what's going on. So let's have a look at this report. The first nicest thing I like about this report is, what if you want to share this out and you don't want someone to have to install Visual Studio to open the report? Do not worry. The export option has you can save it as an HTML, you can save it as CSV, you can put it in your, Azure DevOps ticket, your Jira ticket, share it as an email to your team to figure out how to plan for this. So this should really help you get over that initial step of like, how much is my time investment for migration? The report will tell you, okay, so it found 3 projects. It's like, these are the 6 main issue buckets you have to look at. You can also just like, it also kind of generates like stories or like tasks depending on what kind of like sprint planning or like project planning you do in your team. So you can kind of like start using this as a starting point to start planning the whole upgrade process. So let's see. So it says I have 84 mandatory updates and a handful of potential breaking changes. So that sounds about right because this is a complete like unmigrated Xamarin project. Yeah, I don't know if anyone notices it. This is actually the cat clock example from our Xamarin samples repo. So if I go into the project view, let's go look at the forms project. So in the forms head project that we used to have, it'll let me know that, okay, so I have these many issues, 3 issues, 3. Okay, so we can look further in, and it'll let you know that, okay, there's a whole bunch of NuGet dependencies, which makes sense because these are all referencing the Xamarin.Forms NuGet, which obviously has to go away. We need to pull in the new .NET MAUI NuGets. It also noticed that, oh, you're using Skia Sharp. There is a .NET MAUI version of the Skia Sharp NuGet that you should be pulling in. So it does a really good job, and it kind of gives you like you can track it, you can mark it as resolved, or it's not important. So I really love how this does it. And then it also breaks it down into like issues, individual issues, and lets you know that, okay, these things have to be done right now. This is where the problem is. Go make the updates. So this awesome little like report analysis, I think, is my favorite part of Upgrade Assistant right now, especially if you're coming, and like I said, I work a lot with enterprise customers, and this was the biggest like feedback we got. They were unable to plan a migration. They're maintaining a Xamarin.Forms app. They're maintaining, now have to maintain a MAUI app. So this has been, like, I think, one of the best sort of, features we've added to Upgrade Assistant. So let's pretend Maui, like Maddie is my PM. She's done this for me. And then now she's like, okay, let's get started. Yeah. Let's do the damn update. Okay, so to do the update, let's go into, whoops, no, not. Okay, another sample. Again, those who remember our awesome Xamarin.Forms samples, here's another one. So let's see, I'm going to try upgrade this. So to upgrade your projects, right-click on the project you want to update, hit upgrade, and then this time it opens up the options view, and it lets you pick. You can do it in place, or you can do it side by side. My only tip here, and I think maybe we have a slide that explains this too, but it's like, please make sure you're on some kind of version control, or you have a backup for either of these options, because it will put your project into a bad state till you go in and fix all the build errors.
It makes a backup, but I never trust backups. Please just use Git or, I don't know, Subversion, if you're using that.
Anything, whatever.
On WinForms framework, you very well might be.
I don't know if that's cool anymore, but whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pick in place because, again, I want to do it. I don't want to do it side by side. I want a full, complete, I just want to move my whole app over. Again, not going to wrath demo gods, but you can, like I said, go into .NET 9. We have .NET MAUI .NET 9 preview bits, totally valid upgrade path if you want to do that. Hit next, and again, you will see it in the project that I selected. It's like, OK, these are all the files that need to be included in this thing, whole process. It does all of it. You can uncheck files you don't want it to upgrade for you automatically. I hit upgrade, and again, based on user feedback, we are now giving you a lot more like graphical updates to let you know where the tool is, what it's doing, which of the files are completed, how long this has been running for, and things like that. So what I'm going to do again, just so we have time to go through all the other cool bits, let's look at a completed, again, same project. This is the upgrade assistant is finished running. It went through and made, so all the green files are all done. It's done the namespace upgrades for me. It's figured out all of the changes that it needs to do. For the project file, as expected, it's like, oh, OK, make sure you have all these like in workloads installed so you can, sort of run it. So it's not an error. It's not an X. It's more like a, hey, make sure you have, because it's like you're doing a Xamarin update, have you installed all the tooling for it? We are going to assume you have, because you should have done it. It picked out the dependencies. It gives you a really awesome report. So again, once this is done, you can now go into your project, open it up, and start looking at all the errors you have to fix. I call this the build onion. So you will be there for a little while. You'll fix a handful of errors. It'll show you 50,000 million errors have now appeared. You go fix another handful of errors, it'll go back down to, oh, you have 5 errors left. Yeah. And then I promise you, you do come to the core of the build onion, and your app starts compiling and running, which is awesome. So that's the upgrade assistant for you.
Wow. All righty. Thanks. Let's switch this back. Yeah, the build onion is my new favorite analogy, because that really is what it feels like. You peel back one layer, and you're like, cool. Oh, I changed one word, and 500 errors vanished. Yep. Oh my God, there's 8 million more errors.
It's kind of like when you're in Word and you put a picture, and then it messes up your whole Word document. That's the closest I can compare this feeling to for those who've not experienced this firsthand. But unlike Word, there is an light at the end of this tunnel. With Word, I just give up and I start my document again.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So, OK, so like Sweeky mentioned, there are a bunch of different strategies, and it depends which one is best for you. It's kind of what you're comfortable with, how your source control works, how your code is laid out, if it's in one repo, if it's in a bunch of repos, how you structured your data. And so, upgrading projects in place is kind of like the default thing. Just switch it all up. That makes sense. But you can also create things and upgrade side by side. And so what we shipped with the upgrade assistant is the .NET MAUI like multi-headed template. And so what it does is it creates a new MAUI app that it has the same format of a Xamarin.Forms app. So there's an Android project and an iOS project.
Yeah, and then shared MAUI. Yeah.
Yeah, and so as it goes through the files, it basically says, OK, here's mainpage.xaml. I'm going to update this, and I'm going to put that file in there. I'm going to leave this one as is. So that's an option. You could, do single project and upgrade things into that if you feel so confident about it. You can, of course, do it manually. That's how we built the upgrade assistant and all the things.
I remember.
Yeah, Sweeky basically we locked her in a room for 2 months, and we were like, here are all of our samples. Tell us what you have to do to upgrade these, and then we'll go build it. So it works. It happens. And then another thing that we see a lot of people do is they create kind of a sandbox. So you're like, how is this going to work in MAUI? Is this going to look the same? Whatever. And then you can just copy paste over like little chunks of code.
Yeah, piece by piece. Do feature by feature, page by page, whichever strategy you like.
Yeah. And so that kind of reminds me of if anyone was at Layla Porter's talk yesterday about the modular monolith. She's like, the vertical slices. I'm like, yes, the vertical slices in your sandbox is a good way to test it. So, OK, what can you do tactfully to actually make your life easier instead of just running the tool and being like, oh my God? First of all, if you're not up to date with Xamarin, you really should be. 4.8 is the minimum that Upgrade Assistant supports. You do have to get your Android packages up to app compat, if they're not already. Yeah. Android X, yeah. Things that are deprecated in Xamarin, remove those. We did not bring over deprecated code to MAUI, believe it or not. So those aren't going to work anymore. And then, especially if you've been doing the Xamarin app for a while, a lot of things that you built as a custom renderer in 2015 through 2022, they actually exist first party in MAUI now, or they don't need a custom renderer. We expose it as a property for you. So we've seen customers delete like files and files and files of code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's like the tech debt cleanup is, I think, another fun iteration of doing your migration. It's very satisfying.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, make a list of your NuGets. Make sure there's someone actively maintained. I did have a customer come to me asking if we could convert a Cisco library from 2001 that had not been touched since for them. And I said, why are you using that? I understand. I work for a company. I work for a big, slow-moving company. We do a lot of stuff just like that.
Exactly.
But generally, if it's not actively maintained, I would not recommend using it in your production app. And then a lot of the packages are going to be compatible if they're not UI, if they're built on .NET Standard or .NET 5 Plus, right?
Yep.
But if they are UI, go find either. It might be the same thing. It might be a slightly different name. We have a bunch of lists and suggestions out there.
Yes.
You can actually look on NuGet.org. It tells you which .NET it is able to target. So if it says, such as Newtonsoft JSON or all of those, if it says in the light blue .NET 6, 7, 8, whatever, that means that it will run perfectly fine on those devices. If it's dark blue, that means it is built for this target framework.
Yeah.
So if something's an Android UI specific package or a MAUI UI specific package, the Android, iOS, Mac, and Windows targets will be dark blue.
Yeah, look for dark blue boxes. That's what I tell everyone.
Yeah. And then there's also the community toolkit, which is kind of like an open source library of helpers and stuff. So there are a bunch of reasonable alternatives to the most popular packages there too. And then, of course, you can update things yourself. Like, you're more than welcome, if they're open source, to fork them and do it. If it's an internal thing that you have, like, you can upgrade those. Upgrading libraries is much easier than upgrading the apps, again, because it's not UI. This is an example of what what one of our coworkers did to kind of just like brief update one of his apps. He just literally made this list. And I've seen that when customers have this list, when they come to us with questions, they're in a lot easier shape. And then finally, you want to inventory that native code you have. So you've got your custom renderers and those head projects and the Android and iOS projects. Effects can now be registered in the app builder. So you can move those out of the main activity, out of the delegate, whatever iOS calls things.
And you don't need to rewrite them. You just have to re-register them. So it's just moving that code.
Yeah. Instead of doing Xamarin.Forms and init, it's builder.add, whatever.
That. Yep.
And then renders, they can in many cases be reused with just like a little tweak, or migrated to handlers, which is the new thing we're doing under the hood for UI controls and layouts.
Yep.
And again, like I said, like some of it you can just delete.
Yeah.
So that's very helpful.
Yeah.
And so, a custom renderer, if you have something like this, where you have the pressable view in your Forms project, and then you have Android pressable view and iOS pressable view or whatever it is, if you want to move to a single project, you can actually move these as is into the platform folders.
Exactly.
But chances are you also can, give them a little tweak and rewrite them too. You can also keep them where they are if you stay multi-headed.
Yep.
And then, of course, there's, mapping properties. It's much, much easier in MAUI. We
So this is kind of what like the old custom, if anyone remembers custom renderer code, this is what kind of like your old customer renderer used to look like. Lines and lines and lines of code.
Yep.
And then you want to hit that magic button. This is what it'll start looking like in a handler in .NET MAUI. So we're talking about easier to maintain code, much, much easier to get to the platform APIs. You don't need a giant custom renderer file just to do a small little UI tweak anymore. It's way easier. So I would just say just move over to handlers. Come into handler land. It's super nice.
Yeah. And on that note, now is a good time to demo it.
Yes.
We are doing great on time. We are going to have plenty of time to talk about Windows.
Nice. Yeah, we wanted to make sure we had time for that and show you all this stuff.
Yeah, you can.
So, yes, please hold while I fidget through this again. All right, so let's switch this up a bit. We'll come back to this in a second, and then I'm going to pull up my VS Code, which I should have resized before I pull this up. So,
Command-Shift+?
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, and we can put you away. Okay, so let's actually. Okay, so I'm going to try and build and rebuild something as we are here, but I don't know, I'm feeling good about it. So let's just look at these two. So again, if you've looked at our hello world, file new.NET MAUI sample, what I did, so what we have here is we have the controls. The iOS text entry is this beautiful little thing. It's got this nice little box. There's no black line under it. on Android, you get this little black line under it. And one of the most popular custom renderers in Xamarin.Forms was simply just to set this line to transparent.
Yeah.
They wanted to make the UIs match up. You don't want that little line underneath there, right? So again, if you remember, we showed you that slide. If you had to do this in Xamarin, you'd have like, I'll go make a custom renderer in Android. Oh, pull in like 100 lines of code. Go do like a little bit of work, and then in .NET MAUI, let's see how we do it.
And sorry to interrupt you, but the reason that it looks like that is because in MAUI and in Xamarin, just the same way, we use the native controls under the hood. By default, we don't draw things for you. So if Android says they want text boxes to have underlines in them into however many operating system updates they have, which Android makes some weird design choices. So does iOS, to be fair. But those things are going to happen by default. But if you have a designer who says this is what it should look like, or you, like me, do not want your Android buttons screaming at you by default with all caps, although I do think they finally changed that, that is when you want to start looking into customizing these things. Anyway, sorry.
No, all good. Give me some time to actually get this running, and I can walk. So we'll have that building in the background. So to do this now in a .NET MAUI app, also, if anyone was wondering, yes, I am using the awesome VS Code extension Maddie worked so hard on. It is GA now. You are watching me do this all on a Mac, but in VS Code. Beautiful. I don't know. I love how it all plays together. So what I did now, I don't have to even add a brand new file. I go into the MAUI program. This is our builder. Everyone's familiar with the builder. Just within the builder itself, I just do a configure handler. I call in the method. And all I'm doing is I am like, hey, go into the entry. Add this. I'm adding a mapper called no underline, and I'm running this again only on Android because, yay, we can do awesome conditional code now. Again, don't need a separate file. I'm right here, and all I do is I grab the handler, platform view. This gives me the native Android view now, and I'm just setting its value to transparent. I'm like, hey, just go in and do this for me. That's all I want to do. Yeah. So let's pull back did this finish running? Nope, did I not start running this? Is it still running? Let's see what's happening. It was going so good, and then I went and I messed it up. So nope, it is building. It's doing something. There we go. OK, so I'm going to get my iOS friend back up on the side. Yeah, and look at that. I have a little native debugging going there, and there you go. So now my little underline under the Android entry is gone. And again, don't have to add a new file. I don't have to go learn some fancy, like, oh, how do I set up a whole custom render of our doc was very complicated for that. So you don't need to do any of that anymore. It's simply a line of code that you can add. Again, let's take this a little further. You're like, oh, I don't want to do this for all the entries. I just want this in this one page. And then now you're going to tell me I have to write I have to make a whole new control. No, you don't. No, you don't. Are you kidding me? No. If you don't want to do this for your whole app, it's not like a global level change you just want to do this for a particular page, come into your page. I created this little method here called modify controls. And again, instead of putting it in my program, you can put the code in here again. And you can have multiple different conditionals for all your different renderers. So for example, over here, if instead of like I have to do this for iOS and Android, I don't need to go into each platform folder. I don't need to go make a new file for each control. And I can do this for multiple controls as well, by the way. In this sample, I'm just doing it for the same entry, just for the ease of demoing, because I don't have those up here. But I could be modifying the entry on Android, and I could be modifying, for example, the button or the image on iOS. Again, using the same method, using my awesome conditional build statements, my conditionals, platform conditionals, and again, all in one line, all in one place. Easier to maintain, much, much less complicated than it used to be. It's so much faster to go down into the platform specifics now. Again, gives you all the freedom and flexibility of options. Let's take it another step further. What if you're just like, hey, no, I have a custom control. Like I have a Sweekriti button, which is super special, because when you click on it, it turns fuchsia. Oh. OK? And then I'm like, in my whole app, anytime I need this special Sweekriti button, I just want my special control. You can totally still do that. And this time, since it's all single project, it's all shared, just make a new control. Not a renderer. You don't have to go again, like make the Sweekriti button file like in the slide that we saw. You don't need those 3 separate files anymore. You can just have the one file, put in your conditional code, do all the platform-specific work that you need to do, and you're good to go. So that's the awesomeness of a MAUI handler. But again, if someone is saying, hey, I have this very complicated control, I built the whole thing from scratch, what does that look like? You can still do that. You can still go into your platform. Like, for example, I have this little subclassed handler here. This is specific to just to the iOS platform. I wanted something specific to happen when you long press on an image. I decided, oh, I need to go tap into the life cycle of the control. So I can do that still. I can still do it. You put I'll go make your file in your platform folder. And once this is done, all you do is you come in and, again, just register it in your MAUI program. You don't have to go put an export handler, make sure the file names and the class names match. You don't have to deal with all of that anymore. You just come in, register the handler from your platform, and you're good to go. So again, as you are going through your whole migration process, right, go and when you inventory those custom renderers that you have, you can probably simplify a lot of the code that you have, make it easier to maintain in the future. So I would recommend go in and have a look at handlers. Like, we do have compatibility renderers that you can use to ease migration, but I would recommend, honestly, just go have a look at the handlers. You might have a much better time just like rewriting those into handlers and just like super cool, super easy. So, okay.
Cool. All right. Switch it back.
Switch it back.
Plugging it back in. Thank you for bearing with us with the plugging and
forth.
unplugging and replugging. It's always fun.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, hot tips.
Hot tips.
Hot tips.
Oh yeah, I had to show hot tips. I really forgot this was me. Yeah.
I'll hot tip.
Okay.
I'll hot tip.
Go ahead.
Binding projects, very easy. Retarget them, rebuild them. That's pretty much it. If your data layer is separate, if you used like some form of well-architected code, there is a chance that you can just go straight to single project, so don't worry about it. Make sure everything's up to date. You will survive the build onion. I had to. Also, Shrek is green, which is hopefully what you will evaluate our session as. No, I'm just kidding. You don't have to do anything. And then, your pipelines, don't forget about that. Don't forget about your CI/CD.
Yes. Yeah. And again, if you want to do those first, like I said, it's all the .NET CLI now, so it's super fast. So you'll even have like a build check going on as you're migrating your MAUI branch. So it's always letting you know you didn't break anything. So
yeah. And of course, we're here to help. We know this is a piece of work. People were like, oh my gosh, how do I get in touch with you? We have a ton of docs. We're adding them all the time. Our docs writer is amazing. He's in the UK. So usually when I message him, it's like the middle of the night for him, and I'm like, Dave, I need to blah, 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 blah. But he's always adding things. We have a lot of great community influencers on YouTube doing blogs, all that stuff. We also have a hotline email, which folks have not abused yet. And every time I give it out, I have to say, please do not be the group that is the one who abuses this hotline email.
Yes, please.
Also, if you put like urgent, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, everything's urgent, so it's not going to help. I'm sorry. It's Maui-upgrades at Microsoft.com. It goes to a bunch of the engineers and PMs on the team. And if you're like, hey, I ran the Upgrade Assistant, and now I'm getting this build error, and I just don't even know where to start. Or, hey, I have an issue in my collection view, and in Xamarin it didn't do this, and in Maui now it's doing this. Like, what's the workaround?
Be as specific. If you can provide us with a repro, as much information that you can share in that first email makes it easier for us to get back to you.
Yeah, so. And we're pretty good about responding within a couple days. So sometimes a lot come in. And
so it takes us a while.
But all right, what about Windows? So for all my Windows friends, this is the magic slide that I'm so excited about. Oh gosh, I can't jump on the stage because it wiggles. I'm gonna fall through the floor. Windows, like Microsoft has really refined our client strategy. There are a lot of options, and we kept trying to centralize on one, and then we realized that was never going to happen. And so we're looking at kind of the spectrum now from depth to reach. There's another slide that says those words with very similar things. Reach being the web, right? The web is kind of everywhere. We love Blazor with .NET. PWAs are a great option if you want something a little bit more, closer to a hybrid, but not quite. On the native side, WinUI 3 is kind of the premier modern experience for developing Windows apps. If you're starting a new Windows-only app that you never think is going to be cross-platform, and especially if you want to leverage some of the under-the-hood APIs in Windows, such as the Copilot stuff that they came out with a couple weeks ago, WinUI is going to be the move for you. Maui targets WinUI under the hood, so if you're doing WinUI-specific stuff in a Maui app, you can totally drop down there. But otherwise, WinUI is the way to go. WinForms and WPF are still supported, so we'll talk about that on the next slide. And then there's, .NET MAUI if you're a .NET shop. If you're a JavaScript shop, React Native does a great job with their window desktop app, and so we do recommend it if you're JavaScript. That React Native is a good choice if you want to get cross-platform.
Yep.
And then hybrid, we'll also talk for a second about Blazor Hybrid, but being able to put web views and reuse code from your web project onto your client project is an option. So if you have a Windows app and you are on Framework, is anyone here running a WinForms Framework app? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nice.
I am not allowed to tell you the number. I really wish I could. It is astronomical. WinForms Framework, not supported. It will never get ripped out of anything because all of everything runs on it. We're not stupid. We see the numbers, but you kind of want to get to core. And core is way more flexible.
Yes.
It is actually supported. It's way faster. A lot of things. The thing that we see about WinForms apps is they were built, and every once in a while, someone has to add a little feature, but it is like the core of your company, right? Like you're like, everything will die if this WinForms app dies. And so we cannot change it. It is in maintenance mode purely. It just cannot move. So doing Windows to Windows and just keeping that WinForms app and just moving it up to core is really going to be your best option. The Upgrade Assistant does that.
Exactly, yeah.
It helps a lot. There are some intricacies. I'm not the person to talk to you about that, but there's a lot of folks who have done it. The lines go like this pretty consistently. So, WinForms, framework down, core up. Same with WPF. WPF is also getting refreshed UI controls, so it will have a bit more of that WinUI look and feel, the modern, which is basically the only thing people have wanted from WPF in the past 10 years, which is great. They're both supported. They're both supported pieces of technology that Microsoft is backing. Do not feel like if you have a WPF app, your world is going to fall apart at any given moment. But they're not really doing new features, right? All the new stuff is going into WinUI or MAUI or both, because that's just where they're architected for us to do that quickly.
Yep.
So yeah, there are so many talks online about upgrading Windows apps.
Yeah.
If you're on a Windows either framework or you're on WinForms WPF core and you are actively developing your app, or you're on UWP, which as you noticed was not on that slide, it's not officially dead or anything. It's just, there's no real use case for it because we see people either want to go back to WPF or go up to WinUI. WinUI is really the best option, like I mentioned, if you're using those native APIs. It's a very heavily Windows app, right? The Copilot stuff, the AI APIs and SDKs are really the main thing, or for the touch screens, the drawing APIs, those things are really, really awesome. Upgrade Assistant can also help with a lot of this. WPF and WinForms apps, unfortunately, if you want to move those to WinUI, they are mostly a rewrite. It is a different flavor of XAML. It is a slightly different architecture. A lot of things are the same. If you think you need to rewrite your app anyways, this might be the move. You can also do some Blazor stuff, which we will talk about.
Yes.
If you have a Windows app that you want to make cross-platform. And so for MAUI, if you really want to future-proof your app, right, you think that this is going to be the foundation of whatever business it is for a lot longer, MAUI is probably the move, also especially if you have folks who use multiple types of devices. Like we see a lot of people with WinForms apps, they're line of business apps, right? Like they're expenses and people who go to utility sites and evaluate things. And so these are things that last forever. These aren't Angry Birds, This isn't Temple Run or whatever the app of the week is. And so if you think that at one point your hardware might switch from Windows tablets to iPads, MAUI is going to be the move for you. And so the other thing that MAUI does is, we work with the Windows team. We react to their updates under the hood. So if Windows says, hey, WinUI 3 is going to become WinUI 4 and we're breaking a bunch of stuff, MAUI is actually going to do that work to upgrade the Windows under the hood for you. Yeah. So we react so that you don't have to react. But MAUI, again, would be a rewrite for most of these things, except you can use Blazor Hybrid, which is cool. Everyone loves it. We have had a customer do this whole thing that I'm about to talk to you with, that they did this completely, and it's amazing. So what is Blazor Hybrid? So just a quick crash course on it. I'm doing so good on time.
Yeah,
we nailed this.
No crash course, yeah.
We're doing great. We were like, are we going to be long? Are we going to be short? You never know. How long is Visual Studio going to take? Okay, Blazor Hybrid. So it is a native app, right? Blazor is just .NET, and it's running in a MAUI app. So MAUI is .NET. It is using .NET on the device. It is not using the internet or the browser. Basically, what we give you is a web view control that hooks up all the state and everything to play nicely with the MAUI app shell or the WPF or WinForms app shell. So everything I say about Blazor Hybrid, they do have the same Blazor Hybrid control or hybrid web view control in WPF and WinForms. It is a migration strategy. And so it is fully native web UI, right? So if you already have Blazor investments too, maybe you have a website that's more modern, you can reuse those components, you can pull those into your MAUI app, and then you can access all the native APIs and native functionality that you get there, such as like, phone location, opening native apps, all those things, battery, connectivity. Offline support is obviously the big one that we see when people want to go from web to not web, right?
Yes.
And then it's an app, and no one's gonna say like, oh, this is a hybrid app. Apple says, oh, nice, that's an iOS app. Android says, oh, nice, that's an Android app. And so you put them in the store, and they're just an app. And so one of the really, really powerful strategies we've started to see people adopt, we keep wanting to come up with like a fun name for it. I was trying to go with like Islands of Blazor. It did not work. I really wanted it to work. But you have your app, and it has a bunch of UI components.
Yes.
And so at one point you might say like, hey, let's see what happens if we rewrite this UI component in my WinForms app in Blazor. So, everything else stays the same. This is very modular, right? We're not making you do everything all at once. What's great is then you can take that same component and you can just plop it into a MAUI app. It's the same, right? It's the same UI. It's just the platform's web view. So the web view 2 on Windows, whatever it is on the mobile phones, Mac. And so what you can do is kind of over time continue this process, however you structure your sprints or whatever it is, and slowly go from a fully native WinForms or WPF app or Xamarin app, if you would rather go Blazor UI route, to mostly Blazor UI running on the shell of that native app platform, and then you can just take all those things and put them into MAUI, right? So it's very incremental. It's much, much safer than trying to do everything at once.
For sure.
If you're going Xamarin to MAUI, that's not super difficult.
No.
So we don't recommend rewriting everything. No. But if you wanted to go Blazor Hybrid anyways, this is probably the move.
Yeah. It's a great strategy, especially if you we were talking about earlier. If you've had the foresight, your app is architected really well, and you already have your data and your services all separated out in their own projects, and it's just one UI project that's just driving all of this. This is an awesome strategy to try.
Yep. So, and then you get the reach, you get kind of the future proofing we were talking about, and now you can also pull in other Blazor components from the rest of your tech stack. The MAUI hybrid web experience, we're also coming out in .NET 9 with the general hybrid web view, so it's not actually going to be just Blazor.
That is awesome.
It's amazing. So you can take React and Angular components and put them into a MAUI app and run them on .NET natively that way.
That one is awesome. Again, we've been heavily testing that out. It's I think my new favorite control right now in MAUI. It opens up so many more avenues. You have that one graphic library. It's only available in it's like a React JavaScript library. You can pull it into your app, MAUI app now. It's awesome. So.
We are very aware of the reality of the world, right? Like you can't just get rid of a team and hire a whole new team because you decided you want to move from JavaScript to .NET. So we want to make it as easy as possible for you in the current situation your company or your team or whatever is in. Or if it's just you, and you're like, I'm not touching JavaScript, or I only want to use .NET for my backend. We want to make it as easy as possible for you, too. You'll see this also with Aspire if you join Scott Hunter's keynote tomorrow. That was a great transition. I really hope that was the next slide. If it wasn't, that would have been so bad. Scott Hunter's keynote tomorrow is all about .NET Aspire, which does play mostly nicely with MAUI. We are working on a few things just to tweak it out still. But it is really about a cloud-native, full, holistic tool kit to make developing cloud-native apps easier. And so every mobile app has a backend. I guess I can't say every mobile app. Most mobile apps have a backend. Yes. And so you're probably thinking as part of this migration, like, hey, is everything going to connect nicely to? Aspire is a really good strategy to start to pull in now, too. It's not something you have to do all at once. You can also do it very incrementally. And so that's an option. And there's a couple other talks. I recommend, of course, Paul and Scott's this afternoon on the Azure functions and just kind of like the scalability, because these are things we also see people using a lot with mobile apps. You know, Azure functions. How do I use Azure functions? How do I use SignalR with my mobile app? How do I leverage these serverless things, right?
Yes.
And then, of course, we had to put Peppers.NET on the Nintendo Entertainment System up there, because that is really cool.
That's super cool.
But that is it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will be up here for a few more minutes. I think we have stickers in a bag somewhere, so we'll pull those out
Yeah, we're
as
going to
well.
try to find those out for you, yeah.
And make sure to drop a session evaluation in so, we get feedback from you guys. So thank you.
Thank you so much.